Click, buy, deliver. With remote purchasing from the 2-time Motorcycle News Dealer of the Year, Colchester Kawasaki. Proud sponsors of Chasing the Racing.
3, 2, 1, and welcome back to Chasing the Racing, episode 127. And we're delighted to be down in Cleethorpes, joined by Roger Marshall. Welcome to the pod. How's it going?
Oh, that's fantastic. You finally nailed me down at last, after about 5 attempts. But here we are, and it's a morning, so I haven't had any beer yet, so we're all right.
I'm over the moon the check cleared, Chrissy, because that's the only time we'd get him on. There we are, good man.
Do you know
Yeah, but we're outside the pub, don't forget, so you might be taking me in there in a minute.
Well, he doesn't drink, you see, so I'll be taking you in. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
Well, we had a bit of an adventure getting down here, actually, because we had a blowout at about I've got a trailer on, so it's a maximum of 60 miles an hour. It was definitely not 70 or 80 miles an hour. But driving along the motorway, and all of a sudden just sparks coming out. So luckily Dom wasn't too far behind, so we quickly did a quick change. And obviously end of the BSB season, and we'll get on to talking about your whole career and stuff. But this year you've been heavily involved with the McCams team, so sort of congratulations for the British Championship.
Yeah, I've been in race control for 11 years as riders rep and on the judicial panel. So it's been nice for Steve Rogers from Raceways up in Fleetwood to give me the opportunity with Yamaha to come back in and look after Taz and Jason, and also Yamaha wanted me to join the Blue Crew team as well, which was looking after 6 riders in the Junior Supersport Championship. So they all got a package through Raceways and Yamaha for the season, and they've been aged from 13 to 19, and I met them all at Silverstone, and I've really enjoyed this year looking after them, and they've had some outstanding results, and we finished second in the championship with Ash Barnes, so that's been a big achievement for me as well.
Yes, Ash Barnes is actually Phil Crow's nephew.
Yeah,
small racing world, in it, but he rode really well this year. And
don't pick on Ash Barnes.
Yeah. I mean, some of the other. I had Chloe Jones, one girl, but she unfortunately had a couple of big crashes and packed up with 3 meetings to go. And but we've had some shining results from Luca Allen and Harry Cook, and it's been a good year. And I just introduced myself to them. I didn't say what background I'd had, and I said I'm here to basically try and bring you on, and we formed relationships, and I was a bit worried that we might get motocross mums and dads and and all that, but all the families have been great, and I got some really nice thank yous at Brands from all of them. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope that continues as well next year.
And just speaking of Yamaha more broadly, this year has been a tremendous year all around the world. They've got a chance of the World Superbike title.
Yeah.
When does that get concluded then? How many rounds are left in that?
There's one. And in 3 weeks, yeah.
And it's going down to the wire on that?
Yeah.
My giddy, and Top Rack's definitely it. Like, you've been a huge success yourself without blowing too much smoke up your arse, but to being able to watch the World Superbikes, how it's unfolded this year, must be bloody great to watch for you.
Well, to me, over the last few years, don't get me wrong, I had my Aunt Johnny Ray, but apart from Bautista, it's been that year. It's been he's just run away with it in a way,
yes, of course.
And you sort of either watch it or you don't. But this year I've been absolutely glued to it. I think Top Rack's raised the game, and he's brought it to Johnny, and it's going down to the wire. So it's been fantastic to watch, just like BSB has, really. I mean, the last few rounds has been incredible. I mean, there's been some unbelievably riding in that, and I think GP has been the most boring for me this year.
Yes.
But Superbike's been amazing this year in British and world.
Yeah, it's a great sport to be part of, and
Well, I would just like to know what's Yamaha like. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to say this like a bad thing. Yamaha have always been on the game. They've always been at the front, but especially on, shall we say, the domestics and the world side of it, Yamaha have just like flicked a switch, haven't they? Top Racks appeared on the Yam, and then the Macam sides have always been strong. But when you line them up against the Ducatis, they're just as strong. And you're thinking, where's this all come from?
I think finding a little bit more mid-range has been the biggest thing. The Yamaha's always competitive, obviously carrying corner speed. But if you watch last year's BSB and you watch, say, Jason or Taz go onto the back straight, Eden or Brooksy or whoever, or Bridewell, they'd be passed before the end of the back straight at Brands.
Yeah.
Just getting the same drive. But you didn't see that this year.
Nope.
And they still had horsepower on the Yamaha, but it wasn't quite enough just to get by. So I think just that 4 or 5 more horsepower mid-range has helped.
Massively.
Yeah, massively, worldwide and BSB. And credit to Kev Stevenson, who does the engines for Macams. I mean, very rare have we broke down this year. It's been an amazing year for engines. So, but it's just been incredible. I'm just a very small part of the team who has an input all the time. And I think, because they've been together for 4 years, Taz has been there for 4 years, and we've all been together, basically all the people. So, as you know, Chris, you'll know really well, a team has to work like that. You can soon... Like Steve Rogers, credit to him, he's kept the same 2 riders. When people's been saying, get rid of Taz, get rid of Jason, he's over the hill, he's this, that and the other. And he's proved, Steve has that, he's seen what's in them and what a package they can bring to the table. And it's worked really well. And they benefited this year big time, even though it was close at the end.
What's just to outline to our listeners, what exactly is your role on a day-to-day basis at the racing?
Bar looking after everyone in the paddock.
Yeah, that has happened in the past. Basically, myself and my wife Emma, she's been a tyre technician for 27 years, so you'll have seen her about, Emma. We go on a Wednesday night, we're part of the setup crew. I'm a Sparky by trade, and the more electric you need than ever now. We've got 3 tyre racks, and just one set of tyres is a kilowatt. So basically it's a massive thing, setting a garage up. It takes about 7 hours to set the Macam's garage
Jesus,
up. So we're part of that organisation, carpeted in, start from carpeting, unloading the Arctic. So we're there.
Sorry, for a reference point, when you were running with Phil Crow last year, like doing the privateer, how long did it take you to set up your garage compared to 7 hours?
Phil's only got a carpet. Bless you, Phil.
Bless you, Phil. There we go.
No, but it just getting everything right for your sponsors and Steve coming and the Macam's people. And once I've done that on a Thursday, then I have a track walk organised for 4 o'clock for my 6 junior Supersport riders, and I basically give them a chat before we even start walking on the track, and then I walk the track with them. So that's my Thursday, and then Friday, obviously the morning's free apart from the junior Supersport if we're out. So I go out spotting for them, and then Superbikes go out in the afternoon on a Friday. So basically Taz will say where maybe he wants me to go, and Jason, and I'll go to different corners and bring information back, different braking points, and sometimes you can see what the bike might be doing, or if the forks are bottoming out, or the back wheel's in the air, or anything like that. I mean, sometimes a rider himself isn't quite sure what the bike's doing, and if you can get down on your hands and knees and you watch little details. I mean, I've lived and dreamed this sport since I was 7, so basically I've been through a lot of eras with it, and I feel I can always bring something to the table. You can't always do it. You come back and they say, what did you see? And I say nothing. It looks great, but they're feeling something different, like, and you two know as riders. So it's great when you can bring some at the table. I mean, this year we went to the Knockhill test, and Taz was about, I'd say about half a second more off the pace, and he was born and bred there. And I was at 1, 2, turn 3, and I says, Taz, you're not using any curb, and the rest of them are a full curb and shooting off the end and going down the hill, and it's more or less giving them a better line. So, and Taz says, "Oh, Rog, but it's better to not use the curb." And I said, "I can assure you, it's a better line." And
half a second's telling me so.
Then he went out in the next practice, and when he come in afterwards, he gave me a big hug. He'd knocked half a second off, and that's weird when you can do something like that for somebody who that was where they started their career, and that's the track they know better than anywhere.
Has it been difficult internally in the team with this year having both teammates battling for the championship? Obviously, there's like a massive rivalry as well as the sort of, and
don't tell him anything, Roger. Don't tell him anything.
It's obviously a very difficult dynamic to sort of manage. I guess you're not having to manage it, but to be involved in it, like say you find. You're kind of working for, say, when you're working for Taz, you're still working for his biggest rival at the same time. So is that been difficult to manage?
I can simplify the question. Who's your favourite?
It has been a massive task in the team this year, yeah, because tension drifted over a bit from the year before, from the crash at Silverstone, and then you've got big players in the team like Taz's dad and everybody, and Chris Anderson, who's a Spanner as they call him, who's so passionate for Taz, and it is massive rivalry. But to be fair to Jason and Taz, as the year went on, it got better up until Silverstone again, and then we had the big crash again. So it did raise the bar again, but BSB is such a massive championship to win, and there's not many people ever going to do it. So, Steve Rogers, the team owner, was gutted, and McCams were gutted. But looking back on reflection, I mean, Taz was just basically trying to win the race, and he turned a bit tight and got on the gas early, and it wiped both the riders out. But yeah, there was big tension there for a while.
It also must be difficult. Let's say they're both battling on a last lap, and you naturally, like say if the person in second makes a good pass and overtakes, you naturally, like, because it's your rider, you're pleased that they've made, but then in the same thing, your rider's just been overtaken for the lead, and so like when to celebrate, when not, when to it's almost like you're trying not to show favoritism, but there's a natural part of you that wants
a favourite.
Want to win.
That is definitely right. There's certain people in the team who want one rider to win, and I'm always sat on Jason's side of the garage purely because Taz will have his dad, his mum probably, his brother, Michael Laverty. So there's Jason's here from Australia, has been here a long time now, obviously, and he has not many people round him who can give him a cuddle or information, and I feel that's where I'm strongest with Jason. But it's not favouritism. People look at it like that sometimes because you're sat on that side of the garage, but all I wanted was the team to win the championship for Steve Rogers and McCams, because the millions that Steve and Wendy have put in is incredible. So it was just a massive relief when we actually got the job done with Taz. I felt really sorry for Jason, because you have 106 point lead before the championship, God. And then you've lost it and you finish third in the end.
You being multiple British champion, everything that you've done throughout your career, I need to know, and I ask this question every time and people will be sick of me saying it, what's your opinion on the showdown? Should it be there or should it not be?
Well, I'm a bit like Shaky Byrne. I've been over the years. I didn't like it. And then when Shaky won it the year, when he was a bit off behind Aslam, he won it, and then he said, well, it worked for me that year. But I'm not a showdown person.
Right.
But I can see why Stuart Higgs likes it. I can see why it works, because look at the crowds we get at the end. It's like say somebody's running away with a championship,
Yeah.
then people just say they just like it for whatever reason. So I don't know. It to me, the old-fashioned championship for me was the best. But as a sport and a product to sell on the telly and to spectators and a commercial thing, it's mega.
Totally agree.
Do you know, you go by the nickname of Reg. Where does that come from?
You sound like a dodgy.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it sounds like old man will get me Mac on. Yeah, got no pants on. But
I'm just sorry, we're going to look at you now. There you go.
Yeah, well, we are in Cleethorpes. It's a bit dodgy. Good job we haven't got the Jenny outside. No, Reg just come from years ago. That, as daft as it sounds, there used to be a news broadcaster on the telly called Reginald Bosanquet, and we thought it was quite a funny name when we used to laugh at it, and then I don't know, they started calling me Bosun and then Quet and then Reg, and Reg stuck for some reason. And you know, anybody who knows me really, really well, they call me Reg, or anybody who doesn't know me very well call me Roger. So I just respond to anything anyway.
There we are, straight off the bat.
Just before we started recording, we were talking about a good few years ago, you were heavily involved with Joe Francis, who's now been in Superbikes for quite a few times. He ended up leaving PR racing halfway through this year and finished the season as a stand-in for FHO. Are you still involved with Joe at all?
It's really the first year since he was 14 years old that I haven't been involved with him in a big way. There's a couple of timekeepers who work at BSB, and I used to talk to them all the time. And then Trevor said, there's this guy called Joe Francis who's just won Super Teens. I'd never met him. I'd seen him on some of the television stuff, I forget what championship that Super Teen ran in, but I'd seen it on Eurosport. So I was aware of who he was. Said he's coming into BSB next year on a 125. So would you give him a bit of coaching? And I said, well, I don't know if me and a 14-year-old's going to get on very well, but we'll see. So the very first meeting at Brands Hatch, I met him and I said, right, we'll go for a track walk. And before we'd even got out the pit lane, I thought, this guy's like a sponge. He wants to absorb everything. And he had a year on a 125. I think he finished second in the 125 championship because it was Motor 2 as well. And then a year later, he went with Brent Gladwin on a Motor 2 Honda.
Motor 3 it was, yeah.
Oh, Motor 3, sorry, yeah, Motor 3. And there was KTM with Taz McKenzie on the factory KTM. So
the red line one, I remember.
Yeah,
Tim.
So it was a really good bike, that. And anyway, basically there was a couple of them who battled it out all year, and Joe pulled the championship off, which was amazing. And you know, he's won 600 Supersport races, and yeah, it's the first year this year I haven't been involved, but you know, he's still a young pilot, and I still believe in him, and I still believe with the right team he could make it.
Because he stepped in for FHO, that's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, he left P&R Racing. Him and John decided it wasn't working great, so they split, and then they had the Irish lad step in, and Farmer after Joe, and then he crashed heavily a couple of times and he retired after Silverstone. Yeah. And then Sheldon Shaw, I think, came in, and he was still there at the end. And Joe was asked by Daz, who runs Faye's team, to if he'll stand in at Donington, just for Donington. And he did an outstanding job. He finished in the top 10 twice, and they were impressed, and they gave him another ride at Brands. And
because he was saying he was doing 20, was it 25?
He did a minute 25, which is set just behind Icky in qualifying, and
that's hossing that.
Yeah, and got points again and impressed the team. So whether things will work out for him next year. I don't know, but
I was hoping we're going to get an exclusive there, Chris. I'm thinking, here we go. I
don't think Faye has decided yet who the second rider is. Obviously,
I was about to say, because who's Faye announced? Olsen, Stock-Thousand, and Hickman.
Pete,
Pete, yeah.
Well, Pete, obviously, I think Faye likes the roads as well. Obviously, Macau background, hasn't she? So
yes, I.
So she'll be looking forward to getting Pete on the roads.
Now, what I've heard on the rumour mill, and I really hope it's on the really, really true, that someone's buying out the Ulster. And we briefly discussed how the Ulster is an unbelievable track, and you've had great success around there. But I've heard someone's buying out and settling the debts and going to take it on, and I can only assume there's only one person I know with that kind of money, and that's Fayo, and I hope it's her. I really hope it's her.
Well, I haven't heard that rumour, but I really hope it's true because, my road racing career, what I did, it was my absolute favourite track. I don't know why it was. I just can't pinpoint it, but I've heard a lot of riders say that. I loved Mallory when it was at in its old state, which is completely the opposite. But for some reason, I just absolutely love the Ulster. I'd stick my neck out there as well. Where a lot of the times at a TT, I'd have a bit of a safety margin and the Northwest. But if push come to shove at the Ulster, I was up for it with me and Joey. When I was helping Guy Martin there. One year when I think he won about 6 races that year. I went spotting for him, and I was watching him at Island Bends, a left-hander before he got the hill to Bador, and there must have been a good metre left there before he went up the hill, and he said, in typical Guy, when I come back to the pits, "What do you think, boy? What do you think?" I said, "You're absolutely shit at Island Bends." Of course, Guy's going, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" Like, how he goes, like. And I says, "Well, if that had been me and Joey and I was following him," I said, "I'd be getting covered in shit off the grass bank, or he would behind me." I said, "We'd have the fairing up the bank." I said, "Because you're going up half a mile hill to take a fast right." I says, "It's so important to get up that hill." Right boy. So next thing, he's out in the next practice. Flipping heck, he qualifies pole. He says, "You're right there, boy. You're right." He said, "I nearly had to change into another gear." He said, "I was pulling that many revs up there." So it's amazing, little things like that. But that's how it is, isn't it?
Have you, by any chance, seen his crash at Ireland? When they took the head out? Same, was he rolling ground in front? Got Roger.
I never spoke to him since then.
That was a hell of a race. Him and Bruce Anstey. That was a hell of a Bruce Anstey. What a pile, especially around the Ulster.
What a doer, though.
Well, he is, isn't he? He's a proper. Have you raced against Bruce then?
I don't think so. No, right. I don't. I mean, I suppose he's old enough to have raced against me, but I can't recall it. But I've watched a lot. Obviously, I watch all the videos of TT, everything still. And when you watch him in some of them sections at the Isle of Man, and the lean angle and the amount of road he's using is incredible.
But he doesn't look out of shape.
He's not out of shape.
It's unbelievable. How is someone that quick? And you trust him with your sister, Chrissy. You just go, off you go, son. And anyone else.
And such a quiet, unassuming guy. Nice
laughing assassin, isn't he? There you are. Right.
As we start to speak about your racing career yourself, I was doing a little bit of reading out, obviously before the interview, just to get a few questions sorted. And I thought it was quite funny the story about how you originally got into racing through being a travelling marshal. So do you want to tell us about that one?
Yeah, well, I mean, I went to a local school on the outskirts of Grimsby, Waltham. I grew up, and my father had a motorbike and sidecar. Me and my sister went in the chair, and my mum on the back of him. That was our first transport. And then my dad took me to Cadwell when I was 7, and I clung onto the wire fence at the mountain and saw John Cooper and all these top riders, and I thought, and the smell and going in the pits, and I thought, flipping heck, I love this. And from that day on, I lived and breathed going to school on my push bike and read motorcycle news and researched old riders, and I was just loved it, everything about it. But it's such a long period before got on my first road bike, I bought a 250 BSA road bike and when I was 16, and I crashed it. I went out the gate, I went through the village, and obviously I had a throttle in my hand, and I was just, the first bend come up, I didn't know about shutting off or anything. Next thing, all I saw was bank, trees, grass, hedge, and I walked back home, and my dad's not alive now, but I pushed it all the way back, and he was a typical calm father, and he was leant on the gate like that, and he just went, "Didn't take you long, did it?" But that's how it started, and I went up to a 600 Norton Dominator, as they were called, and went to a club race at Cadwell, because we used to marshal, used to get packed lunch, and you could take your bike to your marshalling post then. It was all different then, so, and hide it behind the bales. Anyway, this particular meeting, Charlie Wilkinson, who owned Cadwell, the travelling marshal didn't turn up. Anyway, he asked me to do it. So I did it all day. It was on the not the Woodland Circuit, the other track. So you just sort of waited till the last man went round the hairpin, and then up went and checked. You're supposed to check, see if the track was clear. So it was just these two lads went through, and then I just shot after them, and I gained a bit out of Charlie's, and I thought, oh, and then I couldn't resist it. I passed one going into Park Corner. I mean, shouldn't be doing it. I should be looking to see if the track's clear. And then I followed him through the gooseneck, and I outbraked him into Mansfield. And Don was the commentator then. He said, "We're just waiting for number." Oh my God, it's the travelling marshal. And I was in front of these two guys. So anyway, that I was really addicted then. Nevertheless, they never asked me to do it again. But my mates were loving it who were marshalling.
How old were you at this point?
I'd be about 18, 19, because obviously then my father was he was an electrician as well, so that's how I started. And then, my mum was a housewife, so my wage was ridiculous. She was hardly on anything as an apprentice, and you couldn't, like now. That's what I say to these young lads at school. I just say, like, I'm looking at them 13 and 14, and they've got an awning, they've got the best bike, new tyres, and I'm thinking, God, if I could have, it would have been amazing to start at that. But it's just a way. I just saved up, and then, like I used to, when I first come out of my time, I worked at a place called Bell's Hill. It's near Glasgow, on a coal store, and you could work as many hours as you want. And I was saving up for a motorbike.
Was this as a Sparky at this point?
Yeah.
All right.
And when I come out of my time, the money was good. So I basically bought a 350, a second-hand 350 TR2 water-cooled from a bloke in Grimsby here. And I used to thumb a lift home, because they were up there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time, earning big money. And they'd just put me on the motorway at Glasgow, and I'd thumb a lift home to Grimsby, which is like 250 miles, coming across the A66 like early hours of the morning, and then A1, and then getting to here. Anyway, I just used to get home in time, say 3 or 4 in the morning.
How long was the thumbing the lift situation at this point? Like, are we talking how many hours on a guess?
Well, if it put me on the motorway at 3 o'clock, I'd probably get home 2 or 3 in the morning. So
that's proper, that, isn't it?
And then I'd load my 350 into my Thames van and go pick my mate up. And then we'd drive to Snetterton. We'd just get there for scrutineering, and then go from there to Cadwell the next day. But and then I'd a guy who was a transport manager who lived opposite. He'd get me a lift off on a fish lorry or something at 4 o'clock in the morning back, and I'd go straight on the scaffold working again. But I wasn't tired. You're that buzzed up because you're club racing, and my first race meeting was on sidecar, because I was a JCB driver. He went 50-50 with me, and the outfit was basically taped together with tape. It caught fire and all sorts. I mean, it was a crazy year that was.
Were you the pilot or the passenger?
As the pilot.
Oh, right. You had
And
a
he
big
was a-
responsibility then.
This'll get you. He was teetotal and I was a pisshead, you know. I mean, flipping heck. I mean, we'd go in Louth for a night out and I'd wake up and I didn't know where I was. I'd be under a tree near the toilets at
It's like
Cadwell.
you and me, this.
And he'd be shaking me in the morning, say, the outfit's scrutineered, all you've got to do is get your leathers on and get scrutineered. Oh, right. Have a bit of a wash and...
Where's my
You
flat
know,
cap? We're
yeah.
off.
And one morning we went out and I was that hungover. We went out onto the club circuit up Coppice, and I was just going through the motions, going out of Charlie's down the straight, and I started passing people. I thought, this is unusual. This thing doesn't normally pass anybody in the straight. I forgot about Park Corner. And we did everything but roll it over. I had no passenger. He had flipped out of it. Anyway, Jim never swore, me passenger. He never drank. The next thing is I slumped over it up against the bank where the fence is. And all I felt was this helmet hit me. And he said, you can find yourself another flipping passenger. And he got over the fence and walked off. So anyway, I drove it back to the pits. But, you know, that was a crazy time. And then, I mean, one time he wanted to try this new Bell helmet. And Steve Daniels, one of the other sidecar lads, he's big docker in Grimsby, big head. And he says, oh, it's all right, I'll just try it. So anyway, he put it on and off we went out in this qualifying session. And I kept feeling something banging me. And I thought, he just wants me to go faster. I'm going faster and faster. And then we took the checkered flag and I looked down at him and it was like an horror movie. This thing had turned round on his head and I couldn't see his face. I nearly shit myself. I thought it was an horror movie. And,
Don't blame you.
and he was trying to stop me because he couldn't see. He said, all I was doing was gear changes and leaning out. And he said, I just went through the motions. It had spun on his head, this big Bell helmet.
He literally did the whole
Yeah,
race blind. He literally just-
he went through the motions. And I thought he just wanted me to go faster.
Fair play to him. Fair play.
But they were the sidecar days. A lot of sidecars would come from round here. And then basically I bought a 350 and a Thames van. And this guy gave me the gearing. I'll just go through the first meeting I ever did. I went to Cadwell and he'd give me this gearing and you're dead green and that, you know, just basic toolbox. And anyway, I went out and I've never been so upset in my life. I think I finished 15th. I couldn't pull top gear. And I said to me, mate, that's not very good. I didn't really enjoy that. And I seemed to be trying really hard. And then the next weekend, it was when I thumbed back from Glasgow and I said, right, till I can ride this thing, I'm leaving the gearing on it. So I went to Snetterton. Of course, I've diced for the lead, the old race, with a bloke called Roger Keane and Dave Oban, who were the top club racers in the day there. And I finished second, and I said, obviously, I had the wrong gearing on. We're at Cadwell next day. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm putting a different sprocket on the front of this at Cadwell. Of course, put the right gearing on. And I won the 350 race, broke the lap record, and in the big race, me and Phil Haslam diced for the lead, who was Ron Haslam's older brother, the late Phil Haslam, who was the man at that time. Sorry, Terry Haslam, not Phil. And I beat him on the last lap. And I'll never forget, it was a big BP race. And when I went down to get your trophies at the little hut they had there before, where you went out near between the mountain and all bends, and all the Haslams were lined up, and I didn't really know them then. And they watched me go in and come out, and I said to Ron years later, what was all that about? He said, well, you won 15 quid and we needed that to get home for the fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah, but early days, early fun, 350.
Fantastic.
And, just went on and had a great year on it.
Were you aware of the Haslams at the time? Like, you knew
Oh,
who
yeah.
all these lads
Oh,
were?
I knew, Terry Haslam was the man. Phil Haslam was coming on the scene,
Yeah.
massive. Phil Haslam was something special. And the bloke called Mal Carter, which was Pharaoh, he called himself Pharaoh Yamaha with the emblem of the Pharaoh's head, and he had a car dealership at Halifax. So he was the first sponsor of Phil. But I remember Mal riding. Mal was a ruthless businessman and a ruthless rider. And, he was not to be messed with, was Mal. He'd either win it or bin it, and that's how he wanted you to ride his bikes. And he schooled Phil, and Phil was... The first year Phil went to the Manx, he did the first 100-mile-an-hour lap at the Manx. So he was very special, Phil, and he was the first person that I ever lost as a friend in racing. And because there was a guy there, if I just go back a little bit, at the time there was a guy called Steve Machin who was a British champion. There was like Derek Chatterton, Steve Machin, all these top riders, and he had a garage out at East Barkwith near Rugby. And we was at a club race towards the end of the year, and I'd broke down and come in, and the spark plug had a bit of metal on it, so the crank had obviously gone. So I said to me mate, we were just outside the van in all the grit and that, and I said, oh well, I'll call it a year this year. Because there was 2 meetings left, and I said I won't be able to afford to do the crankshaft up. So, and I just looked up, and there was a green van there with a little Jack Russell on his knee, and I said to me mate, I bowed my head, I said, Steve Machin's looking at us. And I'd never spoke to him before, and he was British champion at the time. He's a massive name. And he just said, what's up, boy? And I said, I think crank's gone, Steve. So he got out the van and he started helping us take the engine out. Never met the bloke before. We got the engine out and he said, put it in my van. He said, do you know where I am? He was at Ludford then in a little shed. I said, no. He said, he said, come on Thursday and it'll be ready. I said, Steve, I haven't got any money, because it was about £100 a time to have the crank done up at Derek Chatterton's. Anyway, we went up on the Thursday, he put me a new clutch in, done the bike, and he charged me 15 quid. And that was the start of him helping me. Then he got a garage and I served fuel and helped build bikes with him and learnt a lot. And he started teaching me. And then he was involved in the accident when Phil Haslam lost his life at Scarborough. There was him, Derek Chatterton and Phil, and that was one of... I went to the funeral with him, and that's the first time I felt what the sport can be like on the other side.
Yeah.
And it was a dreadful time. And then 3 weeks later, after the funeral, we obviously didn't have mobile phones then. So my mum said when I got home from work, the garages rang. And there used to be a practice day on a Thursday at Cadwell. Anyway, Steve was selling one of his bikes in the showroom. A bloke called Tony Dawson he makes products, rev counters and all that. And he made Astrolite wheels basically. And he made the second 3-cylinder ever built, homemade 3-cylinder. So
clever bloke.
Yeah. So he was with Steve, and this Bull Taco wasn't running right, which was selling. Steve was out on his Yamahas. And Steve never got on them, but then just for some reason he got on this Bull Taco, seized up coming out of Charlie's onto the back straight, and it flipped him off, and he was in Louth Hospital. So I went to Louth Hospital, and he died on the Sunday. So I lost a mentor, and Phil Haslam, and I inherited the garage. Steve's wife June, their brother, and Don Briggs, who became my mechanic, who used to be Steve's mechanic. I inherited all that, and they said Steve would want you to carry on his bikes. Yeah, I couldn't get anywhere. It laid that heavily on my mind, these 2 deaths. I didn't ride very well again that year. This was 1974, so I had a really bad year. And then Mal Carter stepped in. He said, I'll take you to Daytona next year and we'll get a 700 Yamaha. they just started to come out, the 700s.
Yeah.
So basically, he shared the sponsorship with Star Garage at West Barkwith, that was my relationship started with Mal Carter then.
It's an unbelievably small world, the racing world, isn't it? Obviously, like with the Mal and Alan Carter, who's very heavily involved in the British Superbike paddock. You're talking about Steve Machin, who is it nephew Andy Machin, who works at the same place as your son now. And do you know what I mean? It's just such a small. Nearly everyone you mention, like either their sons or nephews, are like in the BSB paddock now, and it's like if you think about all the people in the UK, it's very, very.
It's an incredible family, and you've got to fit in that environment as well, because it's an incredibly hard environment as well, and long hours, and it's not easy for everybody.
No.
Was there anything that helped you? You said about that a really tough year, and it sort of knocked you for six. Those two riders that passed away. Was there anything that helped? Was it just time that sort of healed, or was there anything that specifically helped you?
I think time, and I think big breakthrough was probably Roger Burnett coming on the scene. He used to come to Cadwell with his mum and dad and watch, and then one day they came and they said, "Do you mind if he stays with you for the day?" And anyway, it was a massive influence on my career, because he made me believe in myself again. Like, you can lose your way, as you know, as riders, and you can start to doubt yourself. And he pumped me up again, and so did his brother Ian Burnett. And Roger eventually became my mechanic for a year. So when I split with the garage, so that was a big breakthrough, and made me believe in myself. And it was a good. All these experiences you go through is great for like the sort of job I do now, because people say they can go out spotting, they can say they can bring this and that back to a rider, but it's unless they know what a rider goes through, even trying to clinch a championship, it's like anybody in the garage who's never raced, they just think it's black and white. But for a rider driving to his motorhome, getting there, setting up, your head all week has been
melted.
Gonna finish this job off, and there's only certain people, I think, in the world who can do certain jobs.
You can't replace. You can never ever replicate or replace one thing, and that's experience. And that's what you're talking about, isn't it? And you trust a man who's been through the grit, as you say. You know what I mean? And you can't replace that.
Yeah, I'm honoured that. Well, because I'm of an older generation, but I've still got respect, which is nice, and I still get asked a lot by certain teams and people in the paddock if I'd be interested in helping, working for them, which is really nice. So it makes you still want to do this job.
I know you don't listen to this podcast or watch anything.
I don't believe it.
Well, I would but I'm not techno enough. You might have, if you put it on something for me to watch.
There's quite a few people that have, like at the end of interviews, we've said, who would, if you could suggest someone to get on. A lot of people have asked for you. Whittam's one that springs to mind. You're the first person I said, who should we get on? And he said, Reg, definitely. I have all these stories and stuff. So you do have a hell of a lot of respect in the, obviously.
John Chapman rings me up all the time going, when are you getting Roger Marshall? When are you getting him on? Because I've got to get this in before I forget. Your son, that's the first time I met your son, unbelievable character. I spent a week with him, John Chapman at Goodwood with Aaron and stuff like that, and I've never laughed so hard in my life. Your son is fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know where he gets it.
Adam Marshall, if you're wondering who that is.
Yeah, there's a story that I love that Alan Carter was once at the NEC, and obviously as the generations sort of pass, the new people in the sport a lot of them don't have the sort of historical knowledge of what's happened in the past and stuff. And he was once walking past the stand, and some young lad was advertising for track days, and he'd like sort of he was just sort of speaking to the crowd and trying to get them on the stand, and he said something like, "Oh, have you ever been on track?" And Alan said, "I won the French Grand Prix or whatever." And do you ever get any times like that where people clearly don't know who you are?
Yeah, we've had them in the garage, and if, and the team will all be getting on with the job, and the next thing is they'll be, "Oh, did you ever race?" And then you can hear them all chuckling and that, and said, "Yeah, I did a bit, but
I've done the odd track days." So.
But no disrespect to them. If it's like, I've always been interested in. We've people always say like Lincolnshire riders and who's the best and who's this, and the outstanding Lincolnshire bloke, which people, unless you're historically interested, we've had a world champion and a TT winner in a year, and that was a bloke called Freddie Frith in Grimsby, who had a motorcycle shop, and he lapped the Isle of Man at 90 mile an hour on a Velocette. I mean, and he won a world title. So he's got to be the outstanding character of Lincolnshire at the end of the day. The only bloke who would have probably blown him out the water is a bloke called Kevin Stowe, who was the best rider apart from Jarno Saarinen. He's the best rider I've ever seen in my life as a young person coming through. He was incredible. He worked at Derek Chatterton's shop where Roger Burnett did, and Chris Mayo, who was one of the best engine builders in this country, and he worked for me at Rothmans Honda, Chris. So there was a lot of characters there. But Kevin, on a 350, he just started, he won everything. And we got on a 750 Yamaha, and he could drift a 750 Yamaha around Gerrard's or anywhere, like people do now. And he could ride a motocross bike, he could do anything. And unfortunately, he was in a massive crash at the Northwest. Luckily, I was in front then. I was dicing for a lead, but it was the first lap, and as you both know, the Northwest, mass start, and then down towards University, where the roads basically goes like this through, when there's a lot of you, and a bloke called Frank Kennedy, who broke down, and he tried to move over, but you're heading for each bank in a pack, slipstreaming, and Kevin was involved, and a bloke called Warren Willing, who was who ended up in Kenny Roberts' world leader team and mechanic and running teams, and unfortunately Kevin got a nasty head injury. And if it hadn't been for Roger Burnett and Simon Wilson, who stayed over there for 2 weeks talking to him in hospital, doing night shifts, he came out of his coma after 2 weeks. Thankfully, he lived, and he's in Grimsby still, and occasionally we meet up, go out, because we're both fans of music and everything. But it ended his career. And unfortunately, Frank Kennedy died at Christmas that year, so... Yeah. And Warren Willing rebuilt his leg, and he carried on in working for teams. But he was a very special rider, Kevin was.
Do you know, obviously there's been huge improvements in terms of safety and stuff over the years, but when at the time that you were racing, serious accidents like that and like fatalities and like injuries like we've just been talking about, did you find it different? Did you just always have the mindset of it won't happen to me type of thing? And I mean, how did you sort of carry on doing some things?
I think, in the early days, when we talked earlier about Steve Machin, Phil Haslam, that was a traumatic experience. And then it seemed to go on and on in that period, because there'd be at least 5 or 6 riders every year die at the TT and Northwest Ulster. And it's not that, as I grew better as a rider, and then I think the change in me come when I realised that if I was going to be a factory rider, that I'd have to step up and do the roads, because we had a World Formula One title then, which was mainly on the roads before World Superbike. And if you, like we had Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, all in Britain, and there was all factory rides there, but you had to do well in the British Championship and you had to do well on the road. So basically I decided that I'm going to have to go to the TT and start doing that.
At what point in your career, so you were doing short circuits and everything, so how many years did you do clubs and shorts and thought, you know what, I want to aim for the factory seat, and then you went into the roads? How many years of short circuits, shall we say, did you do before that?
I'll go on to that, but I'll just say that the biggest thing to take yourself to the next level and be a factory rider was when I joined Suzuki, and there was me, Mick Grant, and the late John Newbold, and we was on the XR69 Erin Suzukis in the old colours, which Sheen is famous for. So the best road race I was ever involved in was at the Northwest, and there was 6 of us in a pack. There was me, Granty, Graham Wood, John Newbold, Ron Haslam, and every lap we were slipstreaming down the straight and somebody was leading, and then we were coming up to start the last lap, and you never had a chicane at Juniper Hill then. You just went down one gear and you were pinned, and then onto the start and finish down one gear. And it sends a shiver down me now talking about it. All I can remember was Aslan was leading, Granty was next, and then Noddy, and then me. And then all I remember was Noddy just touching, like maybe just touching the swinging arm of Granty. And I'm not joking. It was like you'd just picked him up and took him away. And I don't even know where he went, because we were doing 150 mile an hour. And as I went down, sent a shiver down me again. As I went down the start and finish, I thought, that ain't good. And I knew his wife was in the pits, his son. And anyway, we went the last lap. I just eased off a bit, and Aslan come by, and then we dead heated on the start and finish, and normally just go straight to the rostrum, and I just went straight back to the Suzuki truck, and all I was interested in is how Noddy was, and obviously it was bad news. And I remember sitting all night with Alison, his wife, and but after that I just moved on to the next meeting, because I knew that I'd worked so hard. I mean, flipping heck, I'd worked over 10 years to get a factory ride, and nobody was ever going to take it off me once I got there. And that's how my mindset changed. But going back to like club racing, they're probably some of the best days you'll ever have at club racing. Just rolling up in your van, chucking your bike out, going in the bar and having fun. But I only stayed in club racing about 2 years, and then we used to have national restricted then, and like nationals and international meetings, and you had to get points to move up, and I just moved up really quickly and got one of the first 700 Yamahas that came into the country. I mean, everybody started getting the 700, then the 750 to do the British Championship on, but a lot of people went straight back to 350s because they were hard to ride. They were animals. They didn't have much leeway for it. You had to be an animal to ride them, and there was only the Aslams or the Potters and people like me who managed to, Keith, who managed to ride the beast. So, but I loved them. They were just right up my street, them old 750s.
But going to the Isle of Man, so you went straight to the Isle of Man, that would have been on the 750s,
well,
wouldn't it?
I had a really bad year in the garage decided to pack up sponsoring. So in 1977, Percy Tate approached me and said he was going to get me an RG 500 and 750 to race.
Lovely.
So Don Briggs was going to be a mechanic who I inherited off Steve, and we had a shed that we were going to do the bikes up, and it didn't transpire, unfortunately. Percy ended up not being a good sponsor at all. So I split with him, and then a guy called Mel Farrer from Sheffield stood in with a 750 Yamaha he'd bought in Daytona, and I rode for him that year. And then at the end of that year, I had a meeting with a bloke called George Beale, and I went up to his shop in Ibstock in Leicestershire, and he's a chemist then. And there he was in his white coat. I'd never met this bloke. He'd been sponsoring people in GPs like Graham McGregor and Geoffrey Sale and certain people. And he wanted to move up into the 750 class in British Championship. So he said, he was serving his pills and all that. And then he said, I'll be with you in a minute, lad. Anyway, we had this meeting and we agreed a deal. And he said, like, come with me. And we went down in this cellar. And there was all these bikes in this cellar on plinths, like Porcupines, 7Rs, G50s, Manxes. That was Aylwards, and this was so-and-so. And he said, and he hadn't paid more than probably 200 or 300 quid for any of them. He said, these are going to make me a fortune, lad. And I went, oh, yeah. Anyway, me and my mate driving home in the van, we'd done the deal. I said, he's nuts, isn't he? He said, yeah, thinks he's going to make money out of all them bikes. Anyway, he's a millionaire now, so
A
he don't have,
G50, 60 grand.
yeah, he don't have to serve pills anymore. So.
I bet he doesn't. No.
And he bought all the spare parts for Manxes and G50s, and
He's a millionaire.
and then he lives at Peggs Green in Leicestershire now, near Stuart Hicken. So,
Fair play.
but he sponsored me for 3 years on 750 Yamahas, and that's when Roger Burnett joined me in my last year. Roger Burnett joined me in 1980 as my mechanic, because Don Briggs, he decided to stay in the garage business, and we had a great year that year, me and Rog. So, and then at the end of the year, Mirawaki, a company in Japan who's really big now, Mamura Mirawaki, asked. Well, it was through Graham Crosby. Graham Crosby was riding the Mirawaki. And then he was going into Ago's team, into Suzuki's team in Great Britain. And he said, he advised Mirawaki to sign me and a bloke called Wayne Gardner. And I never heard of Wayne Gardner, so we decided we'd do Daytona, or the team did. So anyway, I was going to meet this Wayne Gardner. I didn't meet him at the track. We were at a chat show. Chris Carter did a chat show. Chris was a big journalist then. And anyway, we went to this bar, and there's all these mics rigged up, and this bloke said, oh, this is Wayne Gardner, this is Roger Marshall. And anyway, he just looked me up and down, and then he pissed off. I thought, what a little wanker he is. Anyway, he thought I was an old fart, and I ended up thinking he was a little shit. So anyway, we didn't speak at Daytona the whole way through.
Right.
No, I don't know. I'm dead friendly guy, me. I get on with anybody, but he just really rattled me, and then we did Daytona, and then got home, and I only lived I was down on my knees then. I lived in a Tide Farm cottage with a 50p electric meter, and freezing cold, no radiators, nothing. I had my son Adam, and then we got back from Daytona in March, and then first British Championship race was coming up, and next thing is Rat Motorcycles. They'd rang up and they said, would you, Mamura Mirawaki, who owns Mirawaki, said, could you put Wayne up? I said, I don't want to put him up. I said, I don't even like him. Anyway, he said, oh, just for a week till he settles. So, of course, he's never been to England before. He flies in on a jumbo jet. It's like late March, early April. It's snowing.
No heating.
It's freezing cold. He gets the underground to King's Cross to like Market Raisin, and I pick him up at Market Raisin.
The Raisin Mail boy.
Well, hi mate. It was like a movie. This carriage door opened. He come out with this brown suitcase. He had what we call them shorts, he calls them stubbies. He had these shorts on, he had flip-flops wired together with locking wire, and this brown suitcase and a t-shirt on, and like it was freezing. And then I took him back. I had to get him some clothes to wear, and cut a long story short, we ended up becoming really good mates, and everything we did was on a stopwatch because we had like donkeys and that boarded in fields, and we would hold on. We'd ride them backwards, holding onto the tail, and dig your legs in, and we'd on a stopwatch so you could stay on the line. Everything we did was had to be competitive.
Good.
Anyway, we had a year with Milwaukee, and then we had a great success, and then Honda rang him up to team up with Aslam and Joey, and Suzuki rang me up because Graham Crosby was leaving to go with Aggo in GPs, and they wanted a third rider, so I ended up being a third rider to Grant. And
there we are.
Do you keep in touch with Wayne now?
Yeah, it was.
Still got that shitty handbag.
It's weird, really, because he won at Cadwell his first ever race, and he beat me and Shane. But I spent hours teaching him Cadwell, letting him follow me and blah blah blah. And on the sit up and beg Milwaukee, which had a big engine in, spun the rear up, and he told me, he says, Roger, I'm going to smoke the rear tyre, I'm going to do wheelies, I'm going to win the fans over, and I'm going to be a works rider next year. And I thought, you're dreaming. And he was become a fan favourite. They loved it. They loved this big handlebar thing, and he went on to Honda, and then, but it took him. It took the British Championship. I think it was. I won it on the Suzuki, then I won it the next year. It took him 3 years before he got the British Championship off me, but I eventually joined him at Honda, and we were teammates there. But he went on to GPs, and then it was a funny thing, really, because they took Wayne to another level, because I had Wayne drinking like real ale and everything. I got
turned him into a bloke.
I made him a proper Lincolnshire bloke, So
I want to roll a tab, young.
Yeah. So they took him up to where they got him sports psychologist.
And salads and
they ended up from his motorhome. They were escorting him to the garage, so he didn't have to sign autographs and all that. But Wayne was a typical Aussie, like Miller and them. He'd like to wheelie scooters, jump ditches wherever we were, and mess about.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, this went on for 2 years, and then in '86 I was riding for Rothmans Honda in England, and then he rang me up, and we didn't have a meeting that weekend, and Assen was on. He says, Reg, I says, what? He says, on my way to your house. I said, oh, what? You're going to Assen? You're coming with me. And he ditched these sports psychologists. He said, you're the only person who's ever going to get me back on track. He said, my head's gone. So he picked me up in this Porsche. Off we went to the boat, drove up to Assen, got there for tea time. Donna's there in the big motorhome, 300 grand motorhome. Opened the door. Right, what do you want for your tea, Roger? I said, nothing. I said, I'm taking him out. We went into Assen, ditched the car on the way back, pissed as hell, and he woke up with a terrible headache, and Donna's going off on one. I said, I'll be right, just get a couple of tablets down him and blah, blah, blah. And we just went through the meeting. I made him enjoy it. He qualified pole, won the race, then he was world champion the next year, and he said that, thanked me for all that in his autobiography. But we had some funny times. I mean, I can remember when Redgate was when the pub Redgate was at Donington, and we were on the Hondas then, and I used to always go where the fans were at night. Anyway, we were on the real ale in there. The night before qualifying. Anyway, woke up next morning, he's in his caravan next to mine. Anyway, we go out to qualify, and sets off down to Redgate. Of course, we didn't have tyre warmers out then, so off we went down Craner. It was quite cold. Anyway, Wayne just disappeared. He was on it, and I built up and got there, and I came in. I thought, flipping heck. Wayne didn't do much, but he qualified. And anyway, I went out the back of the garage, and they used to have these 45-gallon drums then, where you put all your rubbish in. And I saw something on the top of this drum steaming. I thought, what the hell's that? Anyway, I had too much of this real ale, shit himself, going into you know how you stand up, Rossi's goal gives it all that, pulling his the rain stood up for a fart, and he followed through with it. And it wasn't a very long session, so he had to get a time in. Of course, he come in and his pants were there full of shit on top of this drum, steaming. And Donna was in there washing his ass. So I thought, you know, we had some funny times like that. It's amazing. And we were works riders. Don't think works riders are like that now.
Here's a question. Would you want to go? You see, we talk about time era, and like, you know, I was definitely in the wrong time era. I want to be in that one, 100%. Would you want to be in this one now?
Do you know, I couldn't see how I would change, you know. I mean, yeah, we had great times, and it's more, I like the safety side of it now.
Yeah, of course,
for sure.
Of course,
You know, we got knocked about big time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've woke up in too many medical centres not knowing where I am when you've hit tyres, you know, like Knickerbrook and Gerrard's and the S's and all these, you haven't got a clue, and then 2 weeks later you don't know where you've crashed, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I've always said, I think it's in you to be what you are. Obviously you'd have to toe the line a bit more now, because it's definitely like that. But there's sponsors who still like you to have a good time. I mean, McCann's people are brilliant, you know, and I think I'd have settled in that era. And it's just, I don't know. I always look back. I remember my first TT was on Aylward's return, and I've just
what a time.
Diversing a bit now, but I thought Aylward was always the playboy and always a drinker, and he loved life. And you know, for him to go back and do what he did, I remember I broke down at Windy Corner, and I saw him coming down towards Windy where I was broke down, and I jumped back. I thought it was going to crash, and he had everything on its side. You couldn't see any daylight, everything, and he just on the gas. And I just thought, wow, you know, it just shows you that he started on like Manx Nortons and Bull Tacos and all that, and then he come back on a modern bike and blew away all the factory riders on a private Ducati. And then he went to the post TT and beat Aslam, Grant and everybody on factory bikes at Mallory.
Do you know, back then, so like going, like say the week approaching the TT, if you had to say like odds on Halewood winning on his return, but can you sort of transport yourself back then and sort of think, would you have
written him off?
Was everyone writing them off?
To me, it'd be like Leicester winning the football championship at 6,000 to 1 or whatever it is.
Honestly, with the odds,
honestly, I didn't expect that. I thought Ted McCauley, who had put the package together for one of his best friends, and he was a journalist, Ted, great bloke. I didn't know enough about the TT then, because it was my first TT, so it was a big thing for me on a 750 Yamaha. So, I was shocked. Yeah, definitely shocked. I wouldn't have expected that.
I tell you what, it's a very honest opinion, because did you have any ambition at all to do roads? It was only that was the gateway to factory riding. Did you think? Yeah. Would you have quite happily not done the TT? Looking back. At the time.
Do you know, it's weird because I didn't really have an ambition. All I wanted to do was ride a motorbike, you know. Yeah. I mean, there was no... I never thought about being British champion and winning the Ulster and winning Daytona, which I was the first one to do for a lot of years. So all that was just... It just came and it wasn't it's like people like Wayne, he told me he was going to be British champion, and he told me he was going to be world champion. And that was a set in stone in his head. But in mine, I didn't. And going on the roads, it's something I didn't really want to put pressure on myself to be on the roads trying to win a world title. But I realised once I got to a level of winning in England, and that if I was ever going to get picked up by the factory, that the next step is World Formula One.
Of the not all the 11 British Championships that you won, how many were in the equivalent of the Superbike class, like the main class?
Yeah, some of them were in like they had these World of Sport Championships on 500s, and I should say there'd be probably about 8 in the 1000cc class, or you could ride 500s in. In fact, there were mixed then. You could ride 500 4-stroke, everything, sometimes up to 1300cc. It varied a bit each year.
Mm-hmm.
The ACU come up, tried to put more bikes on the grid, like we've had over the years now. Try to make it competitive and financially good for most people.
Yeah.
So it's I didn't realise till I actually packed up that after about a year, I sort of reflected back and I thought, yeah, that wasn't a bad effort, really. For somebody coming from
that's a modest way of saying it, by the way. There you go. It wasn't bad.
Coming from a council house in this area, I thought, yeah, it was a fight to get there. I mean, I wasn't a factory rider till I was 30, so. And I remember there was a double spread in Motorcycle News and it said there is life after 30, so I think any rider who thinks that it's like Bayliss when he come here, flipping heck, he was 24 years old. And he went on to win a GP and world champion Superbike and British. So I think sometimes people start too young and get it too easy. And I think when you've got to fight for it, like we all did, and work like we did, the age thing didn't come in so much. I think because you grafted so hard, you wanted it more. It was a weird thing to say, but I mean, and at one time, I mean, I suppose I was one of the fittest blokes eventually on the track when I decided to get really serious about the job. I mean, don't get me wrong, I never stopped drinking. I don't want...
Don't get me wrong, Doc. Jesus Christ, I didn't pack up the pints.
I don't want any bad press here.
I like it. Take no critique. Take no British champion drinks pints. There you are.
No, I just... I mean, some of the young kids I've helped, I said, like, they talked to me about training, and I said, look, this was a day's training for me. When Grimsby Town were a good team, I said, I would go there, they'd have a shirt with my name on and number 11 on the back, and I had a few good friends there who liked the bikes, and we were in the 2nd division then, they were up there. So, I used to go there, and we used to come running down to Cleethorpes on the sand dunes, run back, have a bit of a game or do some gym work, and then get changed at, say, 12 o'clock, and then I'd have a shower, then I'd go meet Roger Burnett at the squash club, which is a couple of miles from the ground, and then he'd want to warm up, so we'd go for a 3-mile run, then I'd play him an hour at squash, then we'd do an hour of gym, so we'd get to about 3 in the afternoon, and then I'd drive 15 mile back to where I lived. I was pretty big on shooting then. I had a working Labrador and a German Shepherd, and I'd get back there, and then I'd sometimes take them for an 8-mile run, all in a day. But if you want to drink 10 or 15 pints a night, then that's what you got to do. You got to be fit enough to cope with the job. Do you know what I mean?
I like the way you work. I'm a big fan of your work. I'm a big
I mean, all the people I used to line up on the grid with used to think I wouldn't be any good if I'd had a few the night before. But...
have you ever heard of a chap called John Davies?
Yes.
John Davies
told me one
thing. Oh, there we are. John Davies, who just goes like, it was which pageant was it? Which pageant? It was one of the pageants. It was one of the gang anyway. And he goes, piss ups and press ups, young'un. That's how you get in this game. Piss ups and press ups.
Good man.
I'll never forget what John told me that day.
I mean, the night before racing, obviously, he used to calm down. Only have about 5 pints.
Have you ever done Macau?
Yeah.
I bet you have. I bet there's some stories coming out of that
First
place.
year I went to Macau, I won. I diced for the lead with... there was me, Joey, and Aslam. Aslam won both races, and I split them up in the second race because I was learning that year. But I diced for lead the whole race, and And then the next year, I think Granty beat me the next year. But I had 2 years there. Yeah, the year, I mean, how the hell we got back from there one year, because with Parish, you know, it was just, I don't know how on earth we got home, because where they used to have all the girls with the numbers on in the hotel, one of them, I wouldn't recognise Macau now, because I haven't been since the 80s, so it's all built up now.
Well, funny you should say that. I'm after a spotter, so if you want to come back to Macau with me, that would be outstanding.
Sounds good.
Good man, right? If anyone else listening to this, sod off, I asked him first.
Yeah, get lost. Yeah, so he went in this place where you choose one of these girls with these numbers, and he opened this glass door, and he had one of these jumping jacks that go for half an hour, and he just looked round, lit it, and threw it in and shut the door. Well, you can imagine what serious shit was going on. I mean, he went over the river, that road to the hotel where we were staying. Of course, Parish realised then he'd overshot the mark, but he always carried a suitcase with different passports, and so he put a moustache on and glasses and got the Hong Kong news or something under his arm, and he got the hydrofoil back to Hong Kong. Of course, Mike Trimby then, who runs GPs now, who he started Macau for years and years, we couldn't get off there because we're all banged up by the police in this hotel, weren't allowed to leave, because he was on the phone to Paris at the airport. Please don't get on the plane, we can't get out of here, you know. But you know, serious shit that was. But, yeah, we've had some laughs. I mean, one year I rode for Mr. Honda's son at the 8 hour at Japan at Suzuka, and I teamed up with Joey, and it was they do the electric bike now, the Mugen thing.
Yeah.
But the first year he ever run a bike at the 8 hour, me and Joey went, but Barry Simmons didn't come, who was the team manager then. It's just sent me and Joey because it was a full Japanese setup. Anyway, we tested this bike the day before proper testing started on this little track. And honestly, it was about that long, this bike. And it was horrendous. It was called the White Bull, the Little White Bull. It's in I think McGuinness and them have all seen it in the museum. Anyway, it was slow, but he wanted it to finish. Of course, we got back. Joe had already rung Simmons up. I'm not staying here, I'm getting the next plane home. Simmons was on to me, keep him there, this is Mr. Honda's son, blah, blah, blah. Of course, Wayne Gardner was on the factory Honda. He was like at the sharp end. Anyway, me, him, and I said to Joey, we've got to do it, you know, otherwise job's not going to be good. And there used to be a bar that you could get a taxi ride to there called Mama's Bar. So she was a bit of a character. And she's got albums in there of all the riders and that who's been in there. And anyway, she used to be a bit rude. So, of course, as the night went on,
it got ruder.
Me and Joey and Wayne, and we got really drunk. Anyway, she'd got her pants off. So anyway, we got a taxi back, and all I can remember was going across the bridge to the room, and then I must have gone straight to bed, and Mr. Honda's son was knocking. I didn't know who it was, I was fast asleep, knocking at the door, and he just went, as I opened the door, and I thought, I'm as bright as a bobbin, and I wasn't, but I said yes. He says, could we have your racing licence, please? I went, oh yeah. He wanted to get me signed on and all that. So I went to my briefcase, flipped the lid up, looked in the mirror, and I got knickers on my head.
Shut up, man.
Got Mama's knickers on my head. I thought, shit, that don't look very good. I thought, I can't class it as a sleeping capper out because my ears are out of a crutch thing. So I whipped him off, chucked him on the table. I says, there's my racing licence. And he says, I'll see you at the track. I went, yeah. So it wasn't a very good start, you know, that year. And then,
I wouldn't wonder if he's now talking about that guy. And there's one rider, there's one lad who turned up with knickers on his head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I tell you what, I've got to ask this question because if I don't ask it, the people will be screaming at me. What was Joey like? What was Joey Dunlop like?
Well, I got on really well with Joey. I was lucky. He was so quiet, like they all say.
Yeah.
But typical example at the Northwest, teammates. He coming down to me bar tonight, and then used to have Friday off. So this is Thursday night after practice. So goes down the bar. I'm having a game of pool with the locals, then a game of darts, and then getting to 11 o'clock, and Joey's still behind the bar, still hadn't spoke to me, but that's how he was. Anyway, I thought, I'll go. Just about to go out the door, oi! So a game of arrows. Anyway, cut a long story short, 6 o'clock in the morning, we're all still there. Like, Joey's got 15 vodka and cokes lined up, and we're all having a laugh, and that's how it could be. I mean,
proper.
One year, Simmons asked me, what was that dangerous track we used to go to in Portugal? Villarreal. It had a round of the world. Now, that was a dangerous track.
Right. Even worse than Macau kind of thing?
Oh, God, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And we went, and it was a round of world title. So
Jesus,
serious shit, yeah. So we went there one year, and Simmons says, "Right, you go with Joey, look after Joey, check us in and all that." And we were staying at a lovely little place, but it was on a petrol station. So anyway, it was Mick Grant's birthday, so we were all out. Chris Mayo, the mechanics, everybody. And we went to this nightclub, and then Joey wanted to do a lap at 2 a.m. round Macau. And we had a day off the next day. So we did this lap round there, and then we went back to the hotel. And Chris Mayo was being sick behind the car and lost his false teeth, so I found him in the sick, gave him them back. Me and Joey went to bed. Next thing is, banging on the door, and I said, Joey was fast asleep, and I got up, and it's a bloke who owns the hotel. And basically, he wanted me to look out the window because he couldn't speak our language. I couldn't speak his. I looked out the window. There's this queue of people waiting for get some petrol. I didn't know, I couldn't remember. Joey had parked the car between the petrol pumps with all the wheels up and everything. And I found the keys, and I went out. And I backed this car and parked it, and there was the locker was open on the driver's side. It had hundreds of pounds worth of Joey's money. There must have been 1,000 fags on the back seat, which Joey had took with him. And anyway, Joey never got up that day. Barry Simmons come over that day. He blamed me for Joey being in bed, and it wasn't really my fault. But that was the sort of character Joey was.
Oh, class.
But he was a ruthless rider.
Yes.
Was there much between you on the short and on the roads, like in terms of...
I think I had the edge on short, but if Joey wanted to do it on the day, there wasn't much in it on the track. He was excel on the roads. I mean, on the roads, say, like I've diced with him at the Ulster Grand Prix, it's like you've come across a back marker almost just after Torna Gruff at the hairpin or somewhere. But on fast bits, I learnt a lot of him, like at top of, after Island Bends, which I was talking about, I used to think I could go through there till I followed him through there one day, and he must have pulled 50 metres on me. I don't think he hardly shut off. It is like, and it came out right in the gutter bottom, but totally in control. And he was so quick on fast corners. He excelled. He was an exceptional racer. And flipping heck, what was we talking about earlier? Joey didn't do any training, right? His training was vodka and coke and fags. Yeah, sit him on a motorbike, bang, gone. Incredible. The only time I saw Joey where training would have come into it, Villarreal used to be in a valley, and there was no wind, and it'd be 100 degrees, and then there were long races, and you used to come in for like a splash and dash because it was about a 200-mile race, And he was sort of on oxygen after that race because it was demanding, The heat was incredible.
Aye.
But he's not the only one who's been able to do it without training. I mean, two of the probably the best ever riders we've produced in England is a bloke called Sean Emmett and Michael Rutter, and neither of them, I mean, just getting out of bed for those characters, it was hard work,
Aye.
I mean, I remember when one of my first jobs back in racing was working for a guy called Stuart Med, who was called Med Racing. We had the Kawasaki's, and then we had the RC45 the first year, and I was team coordinator. That was my first job back in racing. And, I brought Rutter and Stringer here. They'll laugh if they watch this. I said, Stuart, I'm going to get these boys a bit fitter. Well, I brought them down on these sand dunes. Well, they couldn't run to save their lives. I trying to get them to do sit-ups and but laugh. It was a lovely period.
It's mad to think that Rutter can't run. Being from the Black Country, you'd think he'd be running all his life. You know what I mean? Running away from bank jobs and nicking things and doing this and doing
the only
that.
time he'll be running is if the pub's shutting.
Good lad, good lad.
Now, I watched you. Do you know when you just come across like random races on YouTube from like years ago?
Yeah.
And I came across one this months ago. It was at Oulton Park. I think it was sponsored by like John Deere or
Marshall Tractors.
Marshall Tractors, yeah.
In
yeah.
1982.
That's the one, yeah. And it was a massive meeting, like the top riders in the world there. And afterwards, the tractor takes like the top riders around on the back and stuff. And you did the double that day, didn't you?
Yeah, there was the Grandstand, as it was then, on BBC with Murray Walker. They made it a massive meeting. Marshall Tractors put all the money in, and they did two races on the Saturday, and they were both fully televised. And that's I beat Wayne on the last lap. One I got him over the start and finish, and one at the last corner. But it was like you say, there was 10 factory bikes or 12 in the race, plus all the top privateers. So, and then on the Sunday we had the two British Championship races, which was sponsored, by Motorcycle News then, and I did both them as well. So, and I'll never forget, I went to get my money, and it was £8,300. I got for the four races.
That was in 82.
82. Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Could you like a sort of average house back then, or like do you know average salary? Like what?
Yeah.
To give it some context, what?
I
It's
know.
a long way from Glasgow down the pit there.
Yeah, like what could back then? What could you have bought with eight grand?
Yeah, quite a lot. Yeah.
That's mint.
Yeah. It was a. But the thing is, I'd never really earned any money up until 82. I was the third rider signed, and I signed for 15,000 for the year, and I had bonuses in my contract to win BSB and the Formula. We had a BSB championship and a Formula One 4-stroke championship that year in Britain, and the world title as well. So I had them written in my contract. I mean, and I'd never earned money before. The only time I used to get a bob or two was when you went to Scarborough and Pete Illaby.
Mm-hmm.
He'd give Sheeny for £5,000 to come, and then give Granty same probably, and probably give me a couple of grand, and we used to have crowds of 60,000. I mean,
massive crowds.
The biggest crowd I ever raced against was 68 at Cadwell. We had 68,000 on the day, and I was just climbing the ladder then, and I was on like the Machen and Saunders Yamaha from the local garage, but we were on such a tight budget. The bike, Don Briggs had done well to get the bike to where we had, and I'll never forget that day. There was on the grid, there was two factory Kawasaki's, Grant and Barry Ditchman. There was Phil Reed on the factory Yamaha. There was like Sheeny, Pat Ennan, all them top riders. There was just so many, and there was Gary Nixon from the factory bikes, and we were on this little private Yamaha, and I think I was on the second row, and we got away. It was a 20-lap race. I'll never forget. 20 laps. And we had a commentator then at Park Corner and one at the start and finish, and I pegged away, and I passed Grant, past Ditchman, and I remember catching past Reedy, and then I caught Sheeny up, and I come out of, I got a good drive out of Charlie's, and I went down the straight, and I thought, yeah, let's do it. And I went past him at Park Corner, and I held him to the mountain, and I'll never forget, I thought I'd fallen off. You know, when you hear like scrapes and you're down, and I thought, I heard this noise, and then I flicked right and over the mountain, and I thought, don't know what that was. And it was the crowd, because I was a local lad. They went berserk. And I was working on a factory then on the Humber Bank, and my mate, who I went to work with, Mick Ogley, he smoked then, and it was a 20-lap race. And I'll never forget what he said to me after the race. He said, I was stood in a pile of ash, I smoked 20 fags, one a lap. Well, just an old boy then, you know, and I was dicing, and I led, and the commentator was going berserk, and the crank started to break up on the last lap, and I crawled over the line in fourth. I had just made it before it stopped, but, you know, I was up for a win there, and I'll never forget, I'd never spoke to Sheeny before, and he tipped me to be the next sort of thing, you know, quite a good rider, you know.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it? And
crazy days, yeah.
But do you know, after a feeling, for any like sort of sports star, but after going through those sort of emotions, you know, riding in front of a massive crowd at your home thing,
yeah,
it's such a unique experience that like 99.999% of the population never feel anything like that.
No, it's even now just talking about it, it's like, yeah, it was wow, you know. And like we were in a small, we had a track, we were in a transit van with this 750 Yamaha from the local garage, and there's all this entourage with all these top doers, and you know, the van left to go back to Barkwith. Me and my mate went back to Grimsby and went back to work on Monday on the Humber Bank, you know. Like weird.
Aye. Were you married back then, or were you sort of playing the...
I was, I was then, first wife, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I was living at East Barkwith then, so yeah.
Right. I was going to say, it would have been, if you weren't married back then, I bet you would have been enjoying the sort of high life there.
No, it didn't make any difference.
Oh my God, what a fella.
You know, that was
the first wife.
You're on about money and that, you know, I mean, it's weird because
I went for the trophies, Chrissy. I went for the trophies, mate.
I didn't earn anything, and then all of a sudden, that 82, and then all of a sudden, 15 grand was, that's what they paid. And then Honda come in, and they wouldn't leave me alone. But I wanted to stay at Suzuki, and I begged Suzuki to let me stay. And they said, you're only going to ride the 4-stroke, because I wanted to try and do GPs with them. And I thought I deserved it. Anyway, Honda kept coming at me. There was at Basic Chiswick then. And I went down to Chiswick for the third meeting. But there was still this 15 grand at Suzuki and the 4-stroke. So they offered me £45,000 to join them in 1983. And all the bonuses to go with it, to win the races, to win the championship, and on and off rides in GPs on the new RS 500 that was coming out, which was a 3-cylinder, which Freddie Spencer made famous. So I had to take it, you know, because I'd never seen money like that before.
I bet, yeah.
I mean, and I built a massive house, and I ended up that year. I won the British Championship. I won the Formula One. I think I earned 120,000 quid in 1983. Built this massive house on this farm estate and everything, but I wasn't happy there. After I had 3 children, and but life it wasn't making me happy, was she want. So basically, I just signed the whole shooting match over and started again.
Yeah.
But I'd never heard of a taxman before. I owed the taxman 40 grand or something that year. So I had to race at a good level the next year to pay him off. So, you know, but...
Well, don't you just won the race? What's your inspiration? HMRC.
But money, property, and it sounds sad really, but it didn't mean anything. I'd lost that many people in my life, and I raced and I got to that level, and all I wanted to do was enjoy myself. Mm-hmm. And basically, you know, it's took me till 12 years ago, I met Emma, and I was working for Honda then. Harvey, Neil Tuxworth approached me in 2009 to help out in the team, which I did. And I met Emma, who was she'd been with Rob Mack 10 years. And basically we just chatted on the grid and all that. And I knew she lived at Daventry. And anyway, there was a dinner and dance at Daventry, and it was one of the clubs I went to present the trophies. And I invited her, and we both enjoy the same things. We like the 3Bs, which Larry Carter will probably write the book, the 3Bs, which is bands, beer and bikes. So, and not necessarily in any order. Mm-hmm. And she's the same as me. And we've got a flat in Cleethorpes. We both go do the bike racing. She's the mobile hairdresser, I'm a Sparky. And that's how we live our life, and we do what we want. And she's the only person I've ever met who's fulfilled my life to that level. Mm-hmm. You know, it's took a long time, and it's broke the bank, and I still don't own anything, but I'm the happiest I've ever been. Well,
congratulations, mate. That's great to hear. No, seriously, you know, that's great to hear, mate. That's great to hear.
On the bands thing, what type of music are you into? What's your favourite band?
There's a bloke called Toby Lee out at the moment. He's only a young lad, but a guitarist, and his first album is called Aquarius, but he's awesome. But I can cover anything. I can listen to anything, but my favourite all-time band is The Who.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, I went to see them when Mooney was alive, when the full band was there. And I was working, actually, in Glasgow at that time. And I'll never forget, it took me 2 days before I could go to sleep. I have never witnessed anything in my life as energetic as, like Daltrey at his best, and Townsend and Moon. I mean, it's fantastic talking about it. I said, it's like something that didn't really exist. And I saw them another 14 times after that, but I've seen them through all the different drummers and periods, but I'm very fortunate to have got to know Roger Daltrey, because there was a bloke called Mick Double who ran The Who, and he was a production engineer. And we was at Mallory on the Rothmans under a British Championship, and this guy come up with these two little kids. He signed, sign. And we had a little chat, and I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm production engineer for The Who." And I went, "You could be my best mate if you want." So he got me like backstage. I met Daltrey, and then when Daltrey's son wanted to come to a race meeting, he'd come to Brands the first time, and we didn't tell anybody who was coming, but it was weird when he was walking in the centre there up to where the start and finish is, and people going,
double checking,
who's that? And it looks like Roger Daltrey. But it was great, you know, and I ended up playing him at squash before gigs and all that type of thing. So it was nice that I met, but that would be the only thing I'd have rather been than a motorbike racer.
That was going to be my next question.
To be the front man of, say, The Who, the Stones, or some energetic band that you can give everything, and more the scream, the more you sweat and the more you jig and go for it. That is power to me. I'd love to do that.
I know. I always find it very odd if I meet somebody and they don't like. It's like a huge red flag if they don't like music. I'm like, what's wrong with you? It's one of the greatest things. I mean, as a human being, isn't it?
I've got some great. I think if I get a few beers in me at this pub we're outside of, the number one, I'm on stage in here, and I know I'm shit, but I'm living something what I wanted to do. Well, I've got some videos, but I think, oh dear, that's not very good, is it?
No,
but you have a laugh, don't you?
Right, that's it.
We can't have you in here without asking about Silver Dream Racer. We were chatting about it earlier, but with David Essex. I remembered, we were speaking before, I remembered the rider that said you must listen to it, and it's in his book. It's Michael Rutter. Michael Rutter's favourite movie, I think all of his life, has been Silver Dream Racer. How did it come about being involved, and what was it like to be in a massive film?
I was riding for George Beale on the 750 Yamaha, and I was approached by Barry Hart, who runs Spartan Engineering. He was going to build a bike for this film. He had built it. And a Welsh company in Carnarvon, they had quite successful. They copied more or less the RG500. They had a 3-cylinder, then a 4-cylinder, and it won the Northwest. It had a first and second with a bloke called Martin Sharp and Frank Kennedy. They were first and second. That was a big success for the company. But he approached, and then this film producer approached me. Would I do the stand-in for David? So I asked George Beale, who I was riding for, if I could do it. He said, yeah, Rog, no problem. So first time was a week at Brands, and all I had to do was basically say David was, well, he was only insured for 10 mile an hour. And I've seen him in interviews saying he did all the riding, but he didn't.
10 mile an hour?
Yeah, because of who he was. They couldn't have a film without him, so I couldn't let him loose. So I had to basically do a flying lap and then come up to the start and finish, because it didn't want it smoking her out, and jump off it, and then David would jump off, and then he'd take his helmet off like he'd just done this and that. And anyway, they paid me £300 a day, and I'd never been paid before. I had an hotel and the food was included. It was a dream job. And then just got to know David, but he just loved motorbikes. And he loved, at lunchtime one day when the producer was out the way, we got him going round on an RG500 like quick. And the producer come up and he stood next to us, and this bike kept coming past, says, who's on that? Somebody said Essex, and that was it. It went mad, It was, but the film was, it was good to get to know David. He was a nice bloke, and if I was ever flying out to Japan or anywhere to the 8 hour, I'd always ring him up when I was down in London, and we'd have a night out. And it was a great bloke to be with. He used to come to races to watch us, and the film it was good fun. I mean, we had a laugh, and at the end of the day, the final sequence, because being a film producer, they do live in a different world. And of course, you got Kenny Roberts, Barry Sheen, Dyson for World Championship. We take this bike because they wanted the crowd, and like Fred Clark was briefed with what they wanted. They wanted Woodcut then was a lot closer in, and it was quite a quick corner. So they wanted all the crowd to stand up as I come over the line in this GP and all cheer. So Fred had got everybody revved up. And anyway, I was struggling going round because this bike wasn't the best, and that we were taking on the world's best. And I said to the producer in the garage, we'll struggle to qualify. Well, he just slumped in the corner. He thought I was going to beat Barry Sheen and Kenny Roberts on this bike, this Welsh bike. Anyway, we put a 750 engine in it, obviously. Well, nobody knew, but we qualified. Anyways, in the race, we left for 750, and it was going quite well. I think I was lying about 12th. Anyway, the petrol tank started to leak. So I stopped at the end of the back straight, and the marshals I said, let me know when the last lap's coming up, because I need this shot for the film, the end bit. And anyway, I set off on the last lap, and Fred had got the crowd ready. And then I come over the line, put my arms up like you see on the final bit of the film, and they got the shot they wanted. So yeah, happy days.
Did you get to go to any like the big
Premiere.
screen?
Premiere, yeah, you had to wear something silver, so I had a silver tie, a silver belt, and yeah,
Is that in LA or?
no, it was in London.
Oh, was it?
Do you remember who you were sitting next to by any chance? I could just see you nudging gun to pile of shite that bike. Like that.
I can't remember who I was sitting next to, but I think we had a good night.
I bet good stuff.
Got a few Patreon questions. A lot of them were actually asking about Joey Dunlop stories and stuff, which we've all already mentioned. There's a really good question here by Keith Fletcher. Can Roger please explain about his virus at the 1986, I think, Northwest 200? I have it on good authority that it was Guinness instigated virus picked up on a Friday night before the race. Did you miss a Northwest because of a virus?
There's no way I'm going to convince anybody, but you know, I never missed a race in my life, but I must admit that I did have food poisoning, and the doctor confirmed that, and I did miss race day. But everybody likes to think it was the Guinness, so let's leave it at that because the myth will never go away.
Yeah.
There we are.
I mean, being a factory rider at the Northwest, it didn't look very good. Let's put it like that.
Oh, class! Absolutely class.
I bet. Well, have you got anything else to wrap
No,
things up?
I could sit here all day listening to this, and honestly, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It's been absolutely brilliant.
We usually give this chance for people to sort of plug the social medias and stuff, but you don't have any Facebook or Instagram or anything, do you?
Go buy him a pint. Next time you see him, go buy him a pint.
No, I'd just like to say I've really enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best for the future on the roads, and I wish you all the best, Chrissy, in the BSB Championship, and you're a great rider, and I'm sure you're going to get to the very pinnacle eventually. So thanks for having me, and I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll maybe do it again one day.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Because we haven't
definitely.
covered much.
I know. I'm glad you want to be back on. I'm really glad you want to be back on.
Be speaking for everyone listening and watching. We've thoroughly enjoyed it, and thanks very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the tour this afternoon.
Yeah, we're going on tour this afternoon in Grimsby. We're starting off at a pub. We're all meeting, and then we'll probably end up back here where we are
On
at the
stage.
number one, and we'll maybe sing.
Good man. Good man.
A huge thank you to all of our patrons, and big thanks to our sponsor Colchester Kawasaki. And we'll catch up soon. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Click, buy, deliver with remote purchasing from the two-time Motorcycle News Dealer of the Year, Colchester Kawasaki. Proud sponsors of Chasing the Racing.